just so everyone knows, I am recording. So if you don't want your face shown or your name shown on this recording, please change those things or turn off your camera.
Ms. Graham, am I okay to begin?
Have to unmute myself.
Okay. Well, good morning. My name is Lamont Robinson. I represent the 5th District in the Illinois General Assembly. I am a representative that represents only the city of Chicago. The boundaries of my district go as far south as the South Shore neighborhood, 79th and Jeffrey. So I border South Shore High School in the city of Chicago, along the lakefront to a community called Old Town Division and Lakeshore Drive. So some of the communities that I represent are South Shore, as I mentioned, Washington Park, Woodlawn, a little bit of Englewood, Bronzeville, which is where I reside, the South Loop, the Loop, which is our business district, also River North, the Gold Coast, which is per capita the highest real estate in the city of Chicago, and then Old Town. So I have a very, very diverse district, high net worth, middle class, low income, all in one district. A background about me: I grew up in Chatham, a community that is a little south of the district that I serve. I went to an elementary school called St. Dorothy's and then on to Mount Carmel High School. And from Mount Carmel, I went to Clark Atlanta University, where I received my bachelor's degree in business marketing. Then I went on to receive my master's at National Louis. I have a MBA from National Louis University. But let me step back a little bit. I've always been involved politically. As a senior at Mount Carmel High School, I was involved in the Student Government Association. But then when I went on to Clark Atlanta University, I was the Student Government Association president. One of the things that I remember about being the Student Government Association president at Clark Atlanta University was there was a vote to increase tuition at Clark Atlanta University, which many of my colleagues, so to speak, the students at Clark Atlanta University had a problem with this. The tuition we thought was already on the high side. And so I did not vote on that legislation, so to speak, at that time to increase tuition. But I did put a suggestion out to the Board of Trustees. I served on the Board of Trustees at Clark Atlanta as a Student Government Association president. And that suggestion was that we take 10% of the tuition increase and we take that money and we put it back into the dormitories. At the time, we were having some challenges with our dormitories. And what many of you will find is any small liberal arts college, a lot of times the dormitories are not in the best condition. Now, this just doesn't happen to be historically Black colleges. This is just any small liberal arts school. Money is tight. And so the dorms are areas that colleges and universities don't really put a lot of resources into. And so I knew that if we were going to have this tuition increase, and I was able to count the votes, and I knew that was going to pass, but I knew that we needed to take some money and put it into the dorms. And so with that suggestion, we did pass the tuition increase or tuition hike, but 10% went back into the dorms. And so that was the first time in my student career that I had to quickly think about my constituents. My constituents were the students at Clark Atlanta University, which moves me into my current role as a state rep. But between college and state rep, I had another career, and actually 2 careers. I currently own and operate 2 insurance agencies in Chicago, one in Bronzeville and one in Humboldt Park. I'm an Allstate agent, so I'm sure many of you have seen the Allstate commercials. And so I have 10 employees that work for me that sell insurance. And it's been a great career because it's allowed me to do something that I've always wanted to do, which was teach. And so for 8 years, I taught at the college level. I taught business marketing, business management, entrepreneurship. I taught college success, which is a class that prepares students that are first generation college students. And it was a rewarding experience for me. I've always wanted to teach because my mom was a Chicago public school teacher. But I was a teacher later in life with the insurance career. I also ran a mentoring program called the Kappa Leadership Institute of Chicago with my fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. For 8 years, I was involved in this organization. I started out as a mentor, associate director, and then director. We have sent hundreds of young men to colleges all across the country. We do a college tour each year. We send our juniors overseas to experience something other than Chicago. We would meet at Kenwood High School twice a week. It's a college preparedness program that not only send these young men to college, but to make sure they matriculate through. So many of us can go to college, but we have to make sure that we complete college, that we finish. And so that was part of the program. I also served on a couple economic development boards, one that brought a Whole Foods and a Chipotle and a Starbucks, maybe some of your favorite eateries, to a community called Inglewood. Inglewood, unfortunately, if you think about Chicago and a depressed area, Inglewood probably would rise to the top of the list of areas of low income, unfortunately, areas of that have high crime. And so I served on this economic development board that brought a Whole Foods and a Chipotle and a Starbucks to that community, that brought jobs and economic development. So I'm very proud of that. And then on another board, I brought affordable housing and a Walmart and some other retail to the Bronzeville community at 47 and Cottage Grove. And so I had been involved prior to me being elected official. And then our Lieutenant Governor by the name of Juliana Stratton, who I hope that you guys know, she's a dynamite a young lady. She's our Lieutenant Governor. I replaced her when she decided that she wanted to run for Lieutenant Governor with our current governor, J.B. Pritzker. I threw my hat in the ring and got support. And I'll be serving in January my third term in the General Assembly at our state capitol in Springfield. And so it's been a rewarding experience that I've had to, again, be an educator, run a mentoring program, serve on some economic development boards, and then currently be a state legislator. And so I've had a great career, but it really all ties in together for me. And that's something that I want you, all of the things that I might share with you today is something that I want to stick in your brain. And that is, to whom much is given, much is required. I've been very, very blessed. I'm going to consider myself a young man to have had some great opportunities, have had great mentors, which is why I ran a mentoring program, and I've always wanted to give back. And so to whom much is given, much is required. I want you to let that resonate with you guys. And then also that the successes that I've had are because I've had some great mentors. And so if you do not have a mentor, think about someone in your family, someone in your, if not family friends, a teacher that you look up to, and ask them to mentor you. The successes that I've had and some of the failures that I've had in my life, I have been able to get through that with great mentors. And so please find someone to mentor you. This thing called life is a team effort. It's a team sport. And so there are many people that have to help us get through this thing called life, particularly in the midst of what we're dealing with right now. And so I hope that everyone is staying safe and healthy out there and wearing your mask and washing your hands. I hate to have to put that announcement out there, but it's so important that we do that. One of the things that I was tasked to talk to you about are the 4 pillars of the Black Caucus. Let me step back and share with you what the Black Caucus is as I take a little sip of a Java here this morning. The Black Caucus is a body of 20 members that are African American. And we, with all of the things that have been going on, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, that we start to address some of these systemic issues. Now, mind you, the Black Caucus has been around for several years, and so we have been tackling these issues, but we wanted to package it together because we knew the seriousness of what was going on within our country. And so there are 4 pillars that we have put together, and the first one is education. As an educator, I understand the importance of education. I talked about my upbringing, but I didn't go into that in detail. So let me do that now. I mentioned to you I grew up in Chatham. Well, Chatham is a community that is in between 2 crossroads. One road would be policemen and firemen, school teachers, postal workers, a middle-class area, white picket fence, manicured lawns. And the other crossroad is, and that's on King Drive. The other crossroad is on Cottage Grove. And so unfortunately, drugs, gangs, and is very prevalent in that area. Well, as a young African-American male on the south side of Chicago that unfortunately lost his father in high school, many of you probably know where I wanted to hang out. I wanted to hang out on Cottage Grove. And I mentioned to you mentors and that looked out for me, that kept me on the right track. I share that to say education is extremely important. If I hadn't received a great education at Mount Carmel High School, had mentors, that I would probably not be in front of you today as a state rep. So education for me is extremely important because it has saved my life and it has given me all the experiences that I've shared with you today. We need to do a better job of making sure that we properly fund our neighborhood schools, which is part of one of the education pillar, and then also creating opportunities for those of us that might not want to go to college. You know, as an educator, I understand that many of us don't want to go to college, and so we have to look for opportunities in the trades. Because there are other ways to be able to support yourself and to support your family outside of college. But it's still an education, right? Whether you go to a trade school or you go to college, at the state level, we need to make sure that we're funding these programs and making sure that it is obtainable. And so in the education pillar, we want to make sure that folks, particularly low income, university and or trade school. The second pillar is healthcare. We in our state, and I believe in one of the greatest states in the country, still have issues around making sure that healthcare is affordable and accessible. There is a hospital in my district called Mercy Hospital that is closing in the midst of a pandemic. And today, a little later today, excuse me, I will be going to my 4th rally to save this hospital. The healthcare is important because if we don't have our health, we have nothing else, ladies and gentlemen. And so the Black Caucus, again, members that make up the General Assembly that are African American, are looking at education, looking at healthcare, and then economic development. Many of our communities, particularly a community like mine, that on the south end of my community that has lack of investment, we are looking forward to putting monies into our retail corridors to make sure that we have a vibrant business community. As a small business owner, like many business owners in the state, I hire people within my community. And so those people are able to take care of their families. They're able to invest in their communities. And so if the state invests in economic development, then we can raise up our communities, create jobs through small businesses. And so that is the third pillar. The fourth pillar that we have, education. I want to step back. Education, healthcare, economic development, police reforms. We all know that we have issues in our society around police. It's one of the ticking points of what we've seen, and really, I want to commend the youth that are listening to me, because you have changed the trajectory on policing. We can look at the Black Lives Matters. We can look at all of the rallies that we've had in Chicago and across the state. It is you that have carried the baton, and I want to share with you, please continue to rally. Please continue to email your state senator and your state rep and your congressman and your mayors across the state, because we need to hear from you. You can do your part to move things along to better our communities. And so I want to thank you for the work that you've been doing and to continue to do that work. With that said, there are two pieces of legislation that I have put forth as a legislator. And so I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but I want to make sure that you understand what I do in Springfield, our state capital. As a state legislator, not only do I create laws that affect how we live on a day-to-day basis, I also amend laws that are currently on the books. That's what a state legislator does. And then thirdly, we pass a budget, because we fund cities and municipalities all across the state. And so we would be considered the checkbook or the credit card for cities like Hillside in Chicago, Barrington, Cairo, Winnetka, Dalton, Harvey. So all these cities and municipalities across the state, we fund them and make sure that they're able to do what they have to do around police and fire and schools. And so the last pillar is around police and criminal justice reform. There are two bills that specifically I am working on and trying to make sure that I pass when we go back to work in January. The first one is licensing police officers. So as an insurance agent, I have a license. I'm licensed by the state of Illinois. And so if I do something improper to any of my clients, I can lose my license. And if I can lose my license, I lose my livelihood and I can't take care of my family. And that's a big issue. Well, police officers should be in the same vein of having a license. Teachers also have to have a license. And licensed by the state of Illinois. And so if they lose that license, they lose their livelihood. And so I believe we should be doing the same thing with police officers. I believe police officers be licensed by the state. And in the event they do something improper, they should lose that license, which unfortunately means that they would lose their income. I think that this, putting this forth will have police officers, will allow police officers to really second guess some of the things that they're doing if their livelihood is at stake. And then the second bill that I'm looking to pass within the package that the Black Caucus is putting forth is to take 10% of the budget that police are receiving and put it back into the communities. Put it into mental health, put it into community policing, put it into youth programs, job training programs. Again, the police can't do it all, which is why they have to work with other organizations to be able to make sure that we stem violence. And we always are trying to figure out where we pull money from. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the money is already there. We should, again, look at taking 10% of the police budgets all across the state and putting those resources back in our communities. And so those are the two bills that I'm personally carrying and working on it and looking forward to getting back to Springfield to do so. And so let me pause there, Ms. Graham. I have given a lot of information, and I just want to find out if Ms. Graham, you have questions, or the ladies and gentlemen that are tuning in have questions for me this morning.
My first question is on those bills. Do you have the bill numbers?
I can certainly give you those bill numbers. If that's okay at a later time, I can send those over to you, because What would be great is if you are listening to me, that you can call your state rep and your state senator and ask them to support those bills. There is a great website called openstates.com, where you can go in and you could put your address in, and you can find out who your state rep and your state senator is. It's important because reaching out to that person, building a relationship with that person is extremely important.
Okay. I have lots of questions. I always have lots of questions, but you're not here for me. So you're here for these students. So I know Vivian is the president of the BSU at Hersey. So Vivian, why don't we start with you if you have any questions?
And good morning, Vivian.
Good morning. I don't particularly have a question yet. I'm just kind of like listening and following along. I thought your idea about the whole 10% is great, and how like the police should have to have licenses, because we all see it in the media, like everything that they've done, and they're like, none of them really have the proper training to deal with the situations that they go through. So I think that if they knew that if you mess up and this can be taken away from you so easily, just like any other person, then I think that they would think twice before they act.
Vivian, I would agree. Thank you for that. You know, we unfortunately see the instances where police are doing wrong on a regular occurrence in the country. But we have to figure out how to stop that from happening. And not that this is a silver bullet, not that this is perfect, but we have to put legislation in place that stems some of this, so it will not happen again. And I believe we get to the root of it because, again, we're focusing in on someone's livelihood, someone's way of taking care of their families. And so, again, this is legislation that I'm looking forward to passing in January. And Vivian, I look forward to your support. So thank you for being with me this morning.
Katie, did you have any questions? No? And Aaron, how about you?
I do have a few. First of all, thank you so much for meeting with us. Like, one of my personal philosophies is it's not about perfect, it's about better, and I think this definitely is going to be making things better. So, okay. Do you have anything in the works for reforming the way police union contracts are doing, or are you just going to be, for now, focusing on these two really, really great proposed legislations?
Thank you for your question, and good morning to you. I personally do not have any legislation that Aaron tackles police unions. There is part of that within the education pillar, which in the package that we will be working on and hopefully passing in January, because things that, and thank you for addressing this, is police unions. Police unions have been drafted to protect police officers. And look, no one likes a bad police officer than a good police officer. That said, we're working with police captains and chiefs all across the state. I've been working with them on mine, but then we're also working with them on their contract, and how do we make sure that if we can remove that police officer. Right now, the contract is so tight that there's a lot of red tape around that. But again, Aaron, I'm not working on that specifically, but I can certainly find that legislation and share that with Ms. Graham, so you can track it and then support that legislation. But thank you so very much, because Aaron, that is a huge issue, and that is one of the things that we're tackling within the education pillar.
Mm-hmm. And so, speaking of education, how is the things like magnet schools and Rahm Emanuel's handling of the way education was handled. Is there anything you can say to that, or maybe how considering mitigating some of the many negative effects of that going forward?
And Aaron, if I understand you correctly, if you don't mind, just throw that question at me one more time. I heard magnet
Yeah.
schools, and I heard Rahm
Or
Emanuel.
charter schools
As
and
we know,
magnet
Rahm
schools.
Emanuel. Okay, so creating. Is that correct?
I guess
Okay.
defunding public schools.
Got it. So one of the things that I think is important that I'm looking to work on, it's not in the package, but we should, particularly in Chicago, look at putting a moratorium or looking at how many charter schools we have to neighborhood schools. Let me step back. We should be funding our neighborhood schools because those are the schools where our youth can go to without testing in. And we don't have to worry about if, in fact, they do something improper, they're thrown out. A lot of times in charter schools, if you do something improper, they will put you out. And so what we're seeing in the city of Chicago are many of our neighborhood schools are not funded, but our charter schools are. And so studying that issue is something that's important to me because I have a lot of neighborhood schools in my district that a lot of my low income students go to that are not properly funded, but then my charter schools are, or my, as you mentioned, Aaron, my classical schools or magnet schools are funded, but not my my neighborhood schools. And so we need to make sure across the state, not only in the city of Chicago, Aaron, that we're funding our neighborhood schools. That is something that is extremely important to me because I understand, as I mentioned to you, the importance of education, but we, again, need to make sure that we fund our neighborhood schools. And so thank you for that. It is something that is in the pillar, but I think we need to drill down a little bit more to make sure that we don't have more charters or magnets than neighborhood schools.
And
Did that answer your question?
Yes. And last question, I promise. So again, in the pillars of education, and economics. So CEJA, the Clean Energy Jobs Act, has a lot of really good provisions for creating jobs. And I have a friend who works in green energy, and she says a lot about how what people don't realize is that technicians are really, really, really important. And I went to a community college, and I go to a community college, and they have a bunch of really, really good programs to teach people how to do these things. Do you have any opinions or views on CEJA or any support? Because I know that criminal justice is super important because you have to be alive to have a job. Unfortunately, this is a sentence I have to say in the year 2020 in our country. But do you have any views or opinions on CEJA or where it's at?
Thank you for that. I am a staunch supporter of CEJA because it really checks a box for folks in my district that unfortunately are looking for opportunities. Number one, those of us that are returning citizens, those of us that have lack of education, Aaron, and then thirdly, those of us that don't want to work for someone. We have an entrepreneurial spirit. And so those are three areas that it's very hard to find opportunities for. And a CEJA checks those boxes. So thank you for bringing that up, which is why I'm pushing a CEJA, particularly in the district that I serve in. I'm also a huge proponent of community colleges. I spent 8 years teaching in Olive Harvey and Daly and Harold Washington here in the city of Chicago. And I know that community colleges can really give a student a great lift to go to a 4-year institution or a lift to go on and start a business or go on to have a great career. And so I commend you for going to one of our community colleges across the state. Let me step back and ask you, where are you attending?
I'm at Oakton, and I was a senator for 2 years in our student government.
Fantastic. And so Oakton is a great community college. I have some friends that I worked with at the city colleges that are currently at Oakton. And so you are really in good shape. There's some great people over at Oakton in a great institution. And so with that said, again, I'm supporting CEJA for three, and I want to repeat, three categories, the three buckets of people that really are hurting. Again, particularly as it relates to COVID, many of us are looking for opportunities, or we've lost our jobs, or unfortunately will not be going back to our jobs. So that's folks that are thinking about opening up businesses, folks that are returning citizens that unfortunately have gotten caught up in our jail system, and it's very difficult if you get in that system to have a job. And then folks, for whatever reason, have lack of education, just have a GED. And so again, the Clean Jobs Energy Act really checks those three boxes. And so again, I'm happy to go back to work in January to Springfield to be able to tackle that. I believe, you asked me where it is, I believe that we should be able to get this done within this 102nd General Assembly that I'll be going to in January. And so I will ask that you keep up with CEJA, that where you live, Aaron, that you send an email to your state rep and your state senator, asking them to support the legislation that's out there. And again, you can do that if you don't know who your state rep is by going to openstates.com.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Regina, Kathy, to either of y'all, these are two adults that are on the call that are active in our league. Regina is a doctor, a medical doctor, and so she's very active in the environmental issues group that we have at our league. But we also, one of our programs, we have an anger to action series that we've been trying to focus on. And we did one program where we basically showcased how environmentally communities of color are far more impacted by environmental issues. So anyway, if Regina or Kathy have any questions.
I do. So, first of all, I really want to thank you for taking the time, especially to talk to our emerging leaders. Your story is so impressive, and I think you were so fortunate to have good mentorship that it allowed you to be in the position to serve our communities today. So I just think that's really wonderful that you cross paths with all the right people, and of course, put in your 200% effort to do that. So I found your story just so impressive. I think there were a number of things that resonate with me just in general. My primary issue, of course, is addressing climate change. The other two things are our civil rights and gun violence. But I guess what I would ask is, after we did our lobby day and spoke to our representatives about the Clean Energy Jobs Act, what thoughts do you have for representatives who seem to have this myopic view that, when they return to Springfield, that they have to address jobs and economy, or they have to address criminal justice reform, but they seem to lack that the perspective that these things all intersect, which I think is the beauty of your 4 pillars, is that it recognizes that we will not be able to solve our problems if we don't look at everything comprehensively. I think that, this idea that you have to do things serially to do anything is flawed. So I just wanted to hear, your approach when you talk to other people in the legislature and you try to get something passed, that includes the 4 pillars.
Thank you for that, Ms. Gomez, and thank you for being with us this morning. One of the things that we have tried to do is make sure that we look at this from a comprehensive manner. All of these things are tied in together: education, healthcare, economic development, the criminal justice. One can't go without the other. And so, there are going to be colleagues of mine that think that we shouldn't be tackling this, or we should be focusing on other things. And so I think that's why it's important, as I mentioned, this will be the 3rd time I mentioned, going to openstates.com and making sure that you find out who your state rep is and your state senator, and asking them for their support for the Black Caucus's 4 pillars. And understand that this is a agenda for the Black Caucus, but our brothers and sisters that are downstate Illinois, that are not African American but are low income, will also benefit from these pillars. Also, our Latino brothers and sisters also will benefit from these pillars as well. So even though it is something that the Black Caucus is spearheading and pushing, there will be other communities, particularly of color, that will also benefit from this legislation. And so with that said, I think it's important that we make sure that our other colleagues across the state support this legislation, which is why I've been asking for our students to find out who those folks are. And so again, it is going to be a heavy lift, Ms. Gomez, but I think that the tide is changing, and with all of the things that we're seeing in our community across the state, but then also across the country, I think that this is the time, so to speak, Ms. Gomez, to strike while the iron's hot.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I know we've scheduled this meeting to make it so that students would be able to attend, and their day does begin at, the high school students begins at 9:50. I think we probably, if we have one more question that anyone has, a burning question, I mean, I have many, but if I would very much appreciate, one of the things that League does is that even though we are a nonpartisan organization, we are dedicated to advocacy on key issues, and every single one of the Black Caucus pillars intersects with an issue that the League has studied and has a position on. And so I can very easily reach out to all over 200 of our members and say, here are the bills, here are your representatives, I need you to write letters, I need you to make phone calls. So I would like you to see our League, even though we're not in your district, though I do own property in the city. So I am a property owner in your district, but though, and obsessed with Chicago, that our League, these are all issues that impact the entire state. So I want you to see our League as a gateway and a way to help with these issues. Our members are active. They make phone calls. I have one member who's made over 600 phone calls. He makes about 600 phone calls a year. I mean, he's active. So I am so grateful to you for taking the time today. And I'll let you, any last final things, and then we'll close up.
Great. Ms. Graham, thank you for this opportunity. As an educator, I always take the time to talk to our youth, because they're really moving the narrative across the country to make sure that we do better as adults, and that we're listening. And so I just want to let the young folks know on the line that we are listening and we do hear you, and continue to do the great work that you're doing. I wore this sweatshirt today because of this was a sweatshirt that I ran on, that I walked and knocked on hundreds of doors across my district. And there's just one key word that I hope stands out other than Lamont Robinson, and that word is vote. And so when you get the opportunity to vote, young folks, you will see that you can change the dynamic, not only of your world, but someone else's world. And we saw that with the current election. When we come out to vote, we can change the trajectory of our country. And so please make sure that you vote not only in the presidential elections, but you vote every election, because what we see and I see as a legislator is that all things are local. And so we can focus in on what's going on in Washington, but we need to focus what's going on at home. And so we need to know who our state rep is, and our state senator, and our mayor, and our council men and women across the state, because those are the folks that affect our lives on a day-to-day basis. And so if I could be helpful to any of you, please let me know. I'm very accessible and can be reached at Lamont, Lamont, Lamont at lamontjrobinson.com. Again, that email address is Lamont at lamontjrobinson.com. Thank you for spending your morning with me. Please stay well, mask, and wash your hands. I hate to put that message out there again, but it's extremely important. And have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
You too. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to meet you, and I hope our paths cross again.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
And to you.
Thank you.